Welcome to the DRF Sports Podcast, brought to you by DRF Sports. America's most trusted name in horse racing is now providing sports bettors with exclusive data, analytics, previews, videos, and expert picks on all major sports. Bet smarter and have more fun doing it. It's the DRF Sports Podcast, and now your host, Sheldon Alexander. Ready, set, bet.
This is the DRF Sports Podcast, episode 75. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Sheldon Alexander, and what a night in the NBA on Wednesday. We'll break all of that down as we'll give you some picks for all four of the Game 6 series in the second round. I went 2-2 from Monday's pod, bringing the totals to 31 and 23 against the spread in the play-in/playoffs and 43, 27 and 1 against the spread overall in my NBA picks. We'll have that plus a deep dive into the NHL. More on that in a sec. But first, hey Iowa, DRF Sportsbook is sending all parlays to the moon. Start cashing in with DRF Sportsbook's 22% profit boost for all MLB, NBA, or NHL parlays. The MLB season is here, and along with the NBA playoffs and the NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs, so it's time to celebrate, and we want to boost your profits. So head over to the DRF Sportsbook now and start betting. Must be physically present in Iowa to wager. So again, coming up, another epic performance from Giannis. The Grizzlies stay alive without Ja, plus some Game 6 picks in two of those series, plus the Heat and Sixers and Suns and Mavs tipping off tonight in closeout games. Matt Russell's obviously here as well with a deep dive into the NHL playoffs. And luckily for y'all, all of that starts right about now. The NBA playoffs continues to live up to the hype. So does our guy, Mr. Matt Russell, who's joining us yet again on another edition of the DRF Sports Podcast. Mr. Russell, how are you doing, my dude?
I don't know about living up to the hype. Sometimes you watch these games, particularly the NHL stuff, and one day you're just like, yep, totally got it. And then the next day you're like, don't know what I'm doing out here. But that's the nature of the NHL or the Stanley Cup playoffs. I know they like to use the trophy in the mix there. The Stanley Cup playoffs. As far as the NBA playoffs, man, it's been a rough go this past week, but we survived and we're still doing well overall, so can't complain.
Yeah, and we get to the housekeeping right off the front end, and you're right, we are surviving. I went 2-2 from Monday's pod. There were some easy wins and then some easy losses, if that makes sense. But a 2-2 record on Monday's pod, bringing the totals 31 and 23 against the spread, play-in/playoffs, and then 43, 27 and 1. The NBA picks overall given out on this pod, and we're going to keep that going as we will have a pick for each and every single Game 6 that is coming up. But we got to start with, and normally we do this in the reverse order, but because of what happened last night, I feel like we have to start with Wednesday night's game between the Bucks and Celtics. This series has just been, this is a series, I think you actually said this early on in this series. This was a series that the Nets and Celtics people were anticipating we were going to have the slugfest back and forth, probably looking like it's going 7, but either way, it's been absolutely incredible. Milwaukee leads the series 3-2 with another huge win. They win Game 5 on the road. Last time we spoke, I had the Bucks in Game 4 at home, and they lost blowing a late lead. In Game 5, the Celtics blow the late lead at home. Bucks win 110-107. And this sets up a crazy Game 6 Friday night in Milwaukee. We know the Deer District and company will be rocking, with the Bucks a chance to close out this series. They're favored by 1.5 points. I got to be on the Bucks. I just don't know how I can go against Giannis. I don't know. I'm watching that game last night. They're going to lose. And I know we try to meld the stats and the eye test on this pod. That's what we do. I know I am the eye test guy. I'll say things like, institutional win, championship DNA, like all those sports cliches you hear over and over again. But I'm watching that game last night, the Bucks are going to lose, right? Like
Yeah.
Giannis is a beast. They're down 6 with like a minute 30 left, somewhere around there. Giannis splashes in a 3 after being 2 of 17 in the series from 3 prior to that. The Bucks just made all of the winning plays down the stretch, whether it was Bobby Portis or Drew Holiday twice. And then again, might I add in that Giannis is just a beast, dropping another 40 piece. I don't know how I go against Giannis, but what say you in terms of game 6, the Bucks being favored -1.5, and just where you're at with this series that has just been a back and forth slugfest?
Yeah, well, first things first, that game crawls over, unfortunately, knocking off the under for the second straight time. A game just absolutely dead nut under pretty much, well, at least certainly through the first half. In the case of game 4 through 3 quarters, 70 some odd points in the fourth quarter of that game 4. Brutal from that standpoint. Man, I don't know about...
sorry, Bucks 6 of 6 from 3 in the fourth quarter. That probably didn't help the over.
Right. I don't know, like from a side standpoint, like, can I get a 3/4 line for the Bucks? Because you know what I mean? Like this team is just driving me nuts with the fourth quarter lead blowing situation. And then, Boston goes and does essentially the same thing yesterday. And, you mentioned Giannis, obviously. How do you not? He wins by decision, right? We thought the big boxing match was on Saturday. Looks like it was last night. He gets, the Greek gets cut, but stays in the fight, so to speak. And you just go like, he's indestructible. I mean, not that we thought that he was going to go away at any point in time, but I went into that game yesterday and I'm like, maybe Boston just has 4 really good players, including inexplicably Al Horford, and maybe the Bucks just have 2. And then Bobby Portis is grabbing offensive rebounds, like getting game winners, essentially. Drew Holiday, obviously one of those 2 players right now, because Chris Middleton obviously still out. And then the Bucks win the game, and you just go like, how did we get here? In the same way that after the game 3 and after game 4, the Bucks won game 3, and it's funny, like in my head they didn't, right? Because they didn't cover the 2.5 point spread, winning by 2. I keep thinking that Boston's up 3-1 in this series. Like, no, it's an even series. Just because it's against point spread doesn't count. Yeah, like how glutton for punishment are we here at a -1.5 here? Obviously, it's dropped down because Boston has shown they're more than capable of winning road games in this series. And I talked about last time. It's like anytime we get any of these 4 teams, I think I just want to take the points. And obviously that would have worked out well, yesterday. +1.5, still probably not enough for me to take Boston. But would you be, shocked in any way, shape, or form if this went 7 games? Obviously not, right? It is truly a coin flip situation here. And so this to me is like, how badly do you want to bet on this game? Like, I think I would prefer Milwaukee in the first half, because I don't really want anything to do with either of these teams in the second half. This is out of control, which is super fun from a watching standpoint. Like, you can watch these games without a bet on them. That's allowed. And it's actually probably going to go better for you. So yeah, I don't really want anything to do with betting on this game. I'll probably be back on the under. I haven't looked to see it, but I presume it's probably still 2-13. Quick note on the shot quality yesterday. The shot quality favored the Boston Celtics, 104-97. So shot quality was all over the under from that standpoint, right? It's 201, but doing some quick mathematics there. And of course, it ends up getting to 217 because both teams were making shots to sort of an unusual degree. So, yeah, like if I had to bet a side, I don't want anything to do with Milwaukee fourth quarters. 211.5, by the way, is the total. I just can't, you know me, right? I go, okay, like just because a coach or a team like won a championship because of certain things happening, whether it's Kevin Durant missing a shot or Chris Paul getting banged up in the finals, like doesn't mean that they're still not capable of absolutely screwing up a fourth quarter, which is sort of, something of what the Bucks were known for before they won a title, right? And that gets all washed away. And so if betting on the Bucks here in the full game is betting on them not to choke away the fourth quarter. But of course they don't choke away the fourth quarter. They make the comeback in game 5. So, I mean, there's certain situations where you just sort of throw your hands up in the air, you shrug your shoulders and you go, I don't know. But yeah, I think Milwaukee in the first half is probably the best play. Then maybe you can grab something live. One team or the other going to be down in the fourth quarter, probably come back based on what we've seen in this series so far. This series is entertaining as hell, but man, just a mess when you're trying to bet it.
I just can't bet against Giannis. I mean, Giannis in this matchup where you're talking, it's a short number again, minus 1.5, and he puts up another 40 spot. And the way that he plays, I didn't even think it was possible to watch Giannis and think, did he get better? Because like, it's not even like he always had the energy was always there, but the Celtics have the wall built to try to stop him. They have the big guy in Al Horford to try to stop him. Grant Williams comes off the bench and does a pretty solid job trying to stop him. And yet somehow he's getting to the basket and making like all these tough layups from like all these weird angles. And he did not have that in his game last year. It's such a weird thing to see, but no matter what he's putting up, you know, Shaq sits there and says every night, you know, big guys, you got to be able to put up 28 and 15, and 28 and 15 has got to be the bar minimum in the playoffs. And in the regular season, he's saying, right. And then you up that come playoff time. Now 15 rebounds in the regular season is very difficult to do, but you know, with Shaq, he's exaggerating. The point remains.
Yeah, not for Shaq.
Right. But like you put up big beast mode numbers come playoff time. And Giannis, I mean, anything's possible after watching that 50-point triple-double last year in the finals. Yeah. And they're going to be at home in front of their home fans. There's going to be a little extra juice. I'm always wondering, thinking, doesn't my guy get tired? Right. And one thing that's interesting about this series, and you mentioned Coach Bud and watching the Bucks just, you know, I don't know how they get by, to be honest, but to me, it looks like you're just so much more free after winning the championship. The nerves down the stretch. It's like, yeah, Giannis is like, whatever, I'll shoot this three. No problem. Drew Holiday, the three that Drew Holiday hit to tie the game, that was ill-advised. Like my guy barely touched the ball before it was already coming back out of his hands to shoot it. And he misses all these shots during the game. And then crunch time, he's like Kobe. Right? It's like, where did that come from? But
isn't that kind of the point? Right? Isn't that kind of the point? Because like Giannis misses that shot a lot of the time. Drew Holiday misses that shot a lot of the time. And when the shot doesn't go, we're talking about how they choked away the fourth quarter, right? But, it just happens to go in this instance.
And even with those plays though, but even with those plays, it still took like Bobby Portis offensive rebound, like the championship DNA winning plays, Bobby Portis offensive rebound, put back, Drew Holiday, that defensive play on Marcus Smart. And I know if you watch the Hot Take TV today, it's going to be a lot of, is that the best defensive play of all time? Blah, blah, blah. Right. Like they're going to go to that narrative.
Sure.
But what a play, like to help off of your guy, come over. Right. Exactly. It's like, normally you guys are taking it a little too far, but in this instance, maybe, right? Like my guy helps off his guy, a clean block, doesn't foul. One thing I found weird talking about clutch plays, Marcus Smart in the postgame said Jason Tatum, I'm assuming, is supposed to get the ball, but nobody moved on their inbounds play. And I'm thinking, wait, what? Because remember how that played out. Giannis was bleeding. Yeah. So the ref makes him go and you know, get that
on cut man situation.
So you have a full timeout, a free timeout if you're the Celtics to draw up a play. And they come out of the timeout, and you're telling me Marcus Smart after the game, which, I mean, I don't know why you're throwing your guys under the bus, but Marcus Smart, nobody moved. So he just ran and got the ball. Insane play by Drew Holiday. The block, the catch, throw it off Marcus Smart out of bounds. And then the steal at the very end. It's just, I mean, those are just winning plays. And it's a reminder, I'm going to get in my basketball bag here, but it's a reminder that basketball is a game that is played at both ends of the floor. Because those Drew Holiday plays, the steal and the block, those are like two big time buckets in crunch time, but we just don't view it in that way because we're so used to looking at, oh, well, who hit the big shot or who missed the big shot. I have a question for you.
Well, I was just going to say, it's the difference between also from a betting standpoint, right? Like laying points or taking the points, right? Because I'm sitting here especially when it's, -2, -3, -1.5, -1, a little bit different. But I'm sitting here going like, those plays are great. And you mentioned like the championship element, like that's the difference between winning and losing and sort of overcoming for example, a shot quality deficit. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get these Bucks here to stretch out a lead in the fourth quarter at home. You know what I mean? Like, where is that energy?
Yep.
That's what I need from a betting standpoint. And so that's there's a different element there where it's like, maybe they are more comfortable playing in these really tight games. Or maybe they just got, I don't want to use the term lucky, but like kind of lucky when they're making those shots, mm-hmm. right? In order to sort of be able to stay in it or sort of get back in it to make those plays down the stretch, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can't shake the fact that like at -1.5, like it feels like we should be betting on the Bucks here. Only like that's the way it felt the previous two games in Milwaukee as well. And like if it were that easy, you know what I mean? Like the line would be higher. The line would be -3 the way it was like when it opened back in game 3. So it just scares me.
Because was it game 3 that was Bucks by 3.5 and they won by 2, right?
Yeah.
So to your point though of playing in close games, I mentioned in last night's game down the stretch, well, in the fourth quarter anyways, the Bucks were 7-1 in terms of offensive rebounds.
Okay.
Remember Time Lord not playing. That is a big factor. And 6 of 6 from 3. The Celtics didn't even hit a 3 in the fourth quarter at all. That's insane. Yeah. But I want to ask you if this matters to you at all. Okay. So the Bucks are 6-2 this season in games decided by 3 points or less. They have the second best record in the NBA behind only the Phoenix Suns. The Celtics, meanwhile, are 4-11 in games decided by 3 points or less this season, but two of those wins have actually come in the playoffs. So does that mean anything to you at all? Do you take anything from that? Because to me, I look at the Celtics and the way that they play, and I'm like, okay, well, they still don't really know in a close game. It's like, okay, well, we're giving it to Tatum, but is Tatum Kobe mode?
That's right.
Ready yet? You know, like is that like there. Full on there?
Yeah. I mean, look at it when it's a close game, what do you need, right? You need either one of two things or both things, right? You need to know for sure who you're going to get a bucket. Mm-hmm. And Marcus Smart, as much as he got a wide open layup, that's the other element, right? This wasn't a tough fadeaway shot, whatever. This is a guy going to the basket who was going to make that shot if Drew Holiday doesn't come over to help. Now, what else was Drew Holiday going to do, right? Like he did have to be involved in that play. Nobody else was going to be dangerous necessarily in that situation. But yeah, like the idea that that the ball doesn't get to Tatum or I don't want to say literally anyone else other than Marcus Smart, but like that's just not what Marcus Smart does. Versus the Bucks defensively, like they have their two guys, right? You don't want anything to do with Giannis if you're trying to get a bucket. You don't want anything to do with Drew Holiday if you're trying to get a bucket, which is also kind of maybe why Marcus Smart got the ball, because he was one of three guys that were not being covered by Giannis or Drew Holiday. Yeah. And then offensively, like who's your guy offensively, right? Now, we don't think of Giannis necessarily as the Kevin Durant, like going to get you a bucket guy, but he is at least still a focal point guy on offense one way or another. Right. So they know what they're doing. So when it comes down to games getting close like that, like they are going to win a little bit more than they're going to lose. Now, you mentioned obviously the Bucks and the Suns, like two really good teams, like literally the defending champions, like they are also going to just know what they're going to do because they are going to be the better team in basically every game that they play. That ends up being a close game, right? So there is some sort of signal noise sort of combination going on there. I would have expected Boston's record to be a little bit better than that, but I can understand why it is because Boston beats you defensively over the course of the long term, right? Like they grind you down over a period, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stop a last second shot or something along those lines, right? So it's a little bit different in how they play sort of long term versus short term. Honestly, sample size being what it is probably doesn't mean all that much, but it would be a little bit disconcerting if you are the Celtics because they have lost 2 games if that were decided by less than 3 points, right? In two of these last 3 games. So again, maybe that's, supposed to give us an advantage if we're backing Milwaukee -1.5. I would say shop for a -1, a pretty cheap -1 at that, right? Something in the -1, -115, like is maybe even -120, just to save the idea. Okay, like if Milwaukee wins this by 1 point, I don't lose. Like that's that's the last thing you want in this circumstance.
Yeah, and I mean, again, overall, just setting up an epic Friday night game. That crowd is going to be rocking. And yes, it appears at least you're leaning Bucks. I'm on the Bucks -1.5 closeout game. Let's see how that one plays out for sure. Speaking of closeout games, we also thought the Warriors were going to close out Memphis in game 5. That did not happen. And in fact, the complete opposite happened as Memphis won 134-95 without Ja Morant. I'm going to repeat that. 134-95. That is a real score in favor of the Ja Morant less Memphis Grizzlies. And I mean, I don't know how you lose by 39.
And that was flattering.
Warriors. It was 55 at one point.
That's right.
55.
It could have been 70. I've never seen anything like it. Have you ever? I don't ever recall. I mean, listen, let's get stats on this. Let's get research on this. Yeah. But watching much of the first half, there's a lot going on in the NHL last night, so I was like pretty deep into that. But I've never in my life seen a 50. I don't even know in the regular season if I've been watching a game, obviously, not watching as much, but 50 points in the third quarter. Yeah, I mean, sure, maybe it stretches out or something in the fourth, but 55, they're up 52. Now they're leads down to 50, right?
Jaren Jackson was hitting runner threes as if he's not on balance, but he's trying to shoot them as if he's on balance, like they're normal shots, but you're clearly not on balance and you just shoot those for fun at the end of practice, but he's splashing them. And it's just what is happening? I mean, Golden State's still up 3-2.
Is that an element, that game last night, of because they know that they're up 3-1 or would be up 3-2 headed back home? Do you just attribute that to the Warriors not really giving a bleep, especially hearing that Morant is going to be out for the rest of the playoffs? I don't know how you decide that he's going to be out until late June all of a sudden. And, he was quasi questionable in that previous game, but certainly out for the rest of the season, it would appear. Is that just a matter of them phoning this game in?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things at play, I think, and I don't know. I think Golden State still walks around as if they are that Golden State, and they're not.
Totally.
So if you think of what happened at the end of game 4, Golden State was losing that game the entire game. They had their first lead with 45 seconds left in that game. So you could say that they were super lucky to win that game. So they're mailing in that game, that one, right? Ja Morant's out. All the talk, leading up to last night's game was Draymond talking about how, we just showed our championship DNA, and that's championship DNA, and that's what we do, and blah, blah, blah. He's talking all that. Then you have Steph being asked, what's going to happen when you guys head to Memphis for this closeout game? And he's like, we're going to whoop that trick, which, if you don't know, that's the song from, what's that movie, Terrence Howard movie, with the Memphis rapper, Hard Out Here for a Pimp. What is that? What is that? Hustle and Flow. Sorry. Hustle and Flow, Oscar winning movie, I'm pretty sure. Maybe Terrence Howard won an Oscar for his performance in it. Whatever. Bottom line is there's a song called Whoop That Trick, which they play during the fourth quarter when Memphis is winning games. So Steph, in his post game from the last game, when asked what's going to happen in the next game, he says, we're going to whoop that trick. Ha ha ha. Memphis, they're a young, emotional team, right? And you're playing with house money without Ja Morant. They're hearing all of that as if Golden State's just taking them as suckers. So you have them coming out at a high gear. You have Golden State not coming out at a high gear because they just think we're going to win just by showing up. And you have those two things colliding, and you end up losing by 39 if you're Golden State. And further to the point that they don't really care, Draymond, if you look if you just do a quick Google search, you see Draymond dancing to whoop that trick with the Memphis Grizzlies fans during the fourth quarter while they're getting blown out. So again, Golden State just didn't really care. And once they're down 20, 25, they're waving the white flag. They know it's done. They know they're going back home, which sets up, again, Friday night, Warriors at home, another chance to close this out. Here's the interesting thing, my dude. Warriors favored by 8.5 in that game. That's a lot of points. And I know I should be scared to lay these points with Golden State after the fact of, as mentioned, game 4 at home, they're favored by 10. They got their first lead of the game with 45 seconds left in the game. Yeah. Clearly did not cover the 10 points. Now you go to game 5. They obviously got blown out, so they did not cover the spread in that game. And now you're telling me game 6 at home, favored by 8.5 points. I so badly want to take the Warriors. I really do want to take the Warriors. And the reason I'm going to take the Warriors, you can tell I'm stumbling through this right now, is because I can just see them doing their front running airplane sellies. I've described this multiple times throughout these playoffs of the Warriors, just, things that they'll be able to get away with against non-actual championship contending teams, meaning the Denver Nuggets and Ja Morant less Memphis Grizzlies team. I'm going with the Warriors and laying the 8.5 points. Probably shouldn't do it because it's too many points, but there's two things. One, I think that last game was Memphis's like, hey, we're not punks. We showed some heart. We won a game without Ja. We gave our home fans one last, but like, can we actually sustain this and come back all the way? I don't know. And I just think the Warriors at home, it's a different beast. It's a different animal.
Right.
You'll see whatever referees you think the NBA would like to send in to kind of wrap this up. And Jaren Jackson hasn't had one of those games where he's picked up 4 fouls early in a while. Like,
sure.
I just see that being a way more likely scenario where game 6 is ending and Steph is flying around and they're whooping up the crowd and yelling, whoop that trick and all that fun stuff going down. Like, I just see that the most likely scenario. Warriors roll by, I don't know, a lot, but I'm laying the 8.5 points in this game just because I'll be so mad at myself taking the Grizzlies and then watching the Warriors blow them out.
So a couple of important things here. First and foremost, I got research on top of things. Terrence Howard was nominated for an Academy Award for Hustle and Flow, but in really one of the all-time surprises, even though it happened 15 years ago. I know what you're going to say. It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp
won the Oscar
Best Original Song at the Oscars, which I like.
3-6 Mafia Oscar Award winners, man.
That seems hard to believe.
It was hard to believe at the time.
Well, I imagine it was very hard to believe at the time.
You know why? Because it's hard out here for a pimp, man.
Yeah, I mean, who knew that the Oscar voters agreed with the general sentiment of the difficulty of pimp life? Okay,
and especially when you put it in the context of those times, like you could see them placating now, in the lens of what's going on in 2022, where there's a lot of
15 years later, people are wondering why there aren't more Black people winning like best director, like best Oscar, whatever. And like, the Academy's like, we gave you It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp. We did that. So
don't we get any credit for that?
I don't know what you're complaining about. If the pimp song wins the award, okay, folks. Moreover, more to the point. Okay. I guess my issue with taking the Warriors here is a couple of things. One, that game closed 9, which meant that sort of the best and brightest, if you will, of NBA bettors saw the 10 and were like, that's too many. There needs to be an adjustment.
Correct.
But since they did that, all we've seen is Memphis being able to compete, and not just compete, but like annihilate the Warriors. And I don't, again, like I've been watching basketball 30 plus years, but like, I still don't understand how no Ja Morant means a team can play better. But we talked about this in the last podcast. Like, they did so in the regular season. And there's no like star or even anything close to it. It's just kind of a bunch of guys out there. Like, you're literally just watching like random dude by and large, just kind of taking turns hitting shots and playing good defense. But you and I talk all the time, especially when in the context of college basketball, it's like, it's not the one star, it's the team working together to create open shots, to play team defense, right? Like, we get all excited about the Celtics because they play team defense really well. It's not because Marcus Smart is like that. I realize he won Defensive Player of the Year, even though everybody's decided that he now has to, like a championship belt, have to give it to Drew Holiday after last night. But like, he's a product in a lot of ways of the team defense, right? He gets credit for these, the charges that he takes because he swoops in because they play good team defense. And like, yeah, there's not going to be one standout on Memphis on the offensive or defensive side, but like, whether it's the regular season, them playing well enough, was the record like 17-2, something like ridiculous when he was out, or the sample size of 96 minutes of basketball without Ja Morant so far. Now, again, it's basketball, shot quality, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe Warriors make a bunch of shots here. Like, it just, and that's how this game goes. I just don't see how there's any indication that we should be laying points with the Warriors, because it didn't go particularly well when you would do it against the Nuggets, right? And we talked about how against the Nuggets, like, the idea for the Warriors is get through these series as fast as you possibly can. And it didn't really look in game 4 like they had that urgency. And it definitely didn't look like they had that urgency in game 5. And the more games that the Warriors play, the more vulnerable they are to not necessarily this series, but the next series, right? Because that's going to be knockdown, drag out with the Suns, presumably. And so I just look at it and I go, like, I think they are giving their best. And yeah, it's easy to close your eyes and see things popping off, for Golden State. But a lot of the things you mentioned can be done by a victory between, 1 and 8 points. I think you're right. I don't think this goes back to Memphis. I think that was the last, party, if you will, before they sell the house, so to speak. I mean, they'll be back next year, but like, this is, they're tearing it down one last time for the season. But like, that can be true. And the Warriors can still win, and win relatively comfortably too. And so that game last night, that was the game that went over. We talked about the over in game 4, but if you went back to the well, you're able to get the over, but that over was all Memphis scoring, right? Yeah. And so I look at it and I go, defensively, over 96 minutes, like, Memphis has done really, really well against the Warriors. So like, why would I think that they're going to just stretch this out in a game that I think now is probably going to be an under type situation? It is going to be sort of a very old school Memphis grind out type of a situation here. So like, defensively through 96 minutes of basketball, like, it looks pretty good for Memphis. And so maybe they certainly don't need to score 135 points. They didn't need to do it yesterday. They could have scored 100 and been fine. I just go, like, I can't lay that with the Warriors, a team that from an eye test standpoint, I go, it's Steph, it's Draymond doing his stuff. I am still way out on whatever Klay Thompson's doing out there. Yeah. I test alone. Like, you can tell me, oh, he had 20 points here, 20 points there, whatever. It's like, and I don't blame him. We've talked about it. He's had radical reconstructive surgeries a couple of different times over the last 2 years. But then you take out, obviously you have Jordan Poole, but like, you take out the element of Peyton, like playing defense and all of that sort of, like, the team just isn't that deep. Jonathan Kuminga starting is not going to be the answer for this team. And so I go, like, we're just relying on Steph Curry in year 15 or something, like whatever it is for Steph. Like, I just don't think that this Warriors team is as good as people are trying to make them out to be. And because there are very small glimpses of it looking like it was in years past, that is sort of, people are kind of drinking the Kool-Aid on that. Mm-hmm. And so the Warriors are going to win this series, presumably. Again, wouldn't be shocked if Memphis won this game. Then I'm going to be all over the Phoenix Suns, like, pick a price in the next series, right? Yeah. And like, I'm just not buying in. And again, maybe that means a 10-point win for the Warriors. Maybe it's a 20-point win. I don't know. Maybe they turn back that clock, but like, I'm not seeing it in long enough stretches here. Yeah, this series could very easily. Honestly, like, Memphis should have won game 4, and they probably should have won game 1. right?
Yeah.
There has been one game in this series where the Warriors were discernibly the better team. And so if I'm looking at, 4 games or 5 game sample size here, I'm going, it's 4-1 Memphis just simply covering the point spread, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's just like, okay, like if that's the case, the Warriors are clearly being overvalued. Like Memphis is 4-1 against the spread. So I just look at it and I go, like, that was clear, that was clear to the like I said, the best and brightest when it comes to betting in the NBA for game 4. Now we go to game 6 and the adjustment has been made from 9, the close, down to 8.5 because we've seen 96 minutes of basketball. I honestly don't think that's enough of adjustment. I think they should probably be closer to like 6.5 or 7 at this point. That's what I would need to get to be backing the Warriors. But that's just the way I look at it, going like, okay, but what am I actually seeing here with these two versions of these two teams?
Yeah, no, I agree with you in that sense that what I take from this series is long-term, right? And long-term, it's like, when they're playing someone real, this stuff isn't going to fly. Those games that you're able to just pull out, like game 4 right at the end, you're not going to be able to do that against a real team. And plus, again, they're doing this without their best player in terms of the Memphis Grizzlies, right? So, totally with you there. I think for me, the only slight reason I'm still on Golden State is more so about Memphis. I'm not anticipating them to come out with the same,
can they keep it up? Yeah,
that they did at home in that last game. But again, I don't know. Is it wrong to just maybe hope that I'm wrong so we can get a good game? Right? Because it seemed like such a letdown after that Boston Milwaukee game, right? So hey, maybe we'll hope for that. Let's move on to Thursday night's games, because those games, some interesting storylines there. We'll obviously start with the Heat and Sixers. The Heat leading the series 3-2 after a massive blowout win, 120-85, covering the 3.5 point spread. Easy. And you know me, I'm not wavering here. I'm not going on Philly. And I know that the idea would be to take Philly because they're back at home now. But no. Stated this earlier. I've stated this from even during the Raptors series. I am familiar with Joel Embiid's work. Okay.
Right.
They should have wiped out the Raptors, especially with the injuries the Raptors were going through, a lot earlier. Instead, they let them hang in that series and get comfortable. Cool. Joel Embiid, after going and everything's great in Philly, everything's all right. And then now you follow that up with a performance that leaves you after the game talking about how you're in a no-win situation. What the hell are you talking about, bro?
Yeah.
I get that you're mad that you didn't win MVP. I understand that you're saying sorry. He said he's in a lose-lose situation in terms of playing through the injury. Why are you why are you not focused on winning? This is exactly where when I come out here and say things about institutional wins, I am on the Heat because of an institution that is Heat culture and the institution that is Sixers culture, which is whack. That's why I'm going to be on the Miami Heat in this game. I'll get to my particulars after as to why I'm going to be on the Miami Heat in this game 6. And for the record, I'm getting too hyped now because if you can't tell, my dislike for Joel Embiid, everything that is Joel Embiid and the Sixers is shining through here.
Yeah.
Philly is favored by 2 in this game. Give me the points with the Heat. I think the Heat close it out in Philly. I like to say it all the time. Real teams in the playoffs, they win road games. They win tough road games. This will be one where if Miami wins, I'm like, okay, that's a real win. I'll get into the particulars after, but I just don't want to, I'm too amped right now. I need to calm down a little. I'll let you go and give me what you're thinking in terms of this line, Philly -2. I think I know where you're going, but.
Well, I thought you were going to, when you started your speech there, I thought you were going to talk about how you want the home team because
role players,
of the role players and the stuff that we talked about in the last episode, which you were very correct about when it came to Miami. Now, maybe, you only feel that like Miami's role players are capable, and honestly, that would be fine. I like that. If you just like Miami's supporting cast better, like that's an element of, like you said, sort of franchise culture, institutional.
Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Sure. Yeah.
So my thing is the biggest thing is that when last time in Philly, Kyle Lowry's coming back injured. He was hobbling around for 2 games. Right. That did not help Miami in any way. It's almost like the Raptors series with Fred VanVleet. You're better just not playing because you're hobbled. So you remove Kyle Lowry. Vincent comes in to start instead. And he is a defensive guy. That helps. But what that also does is allow Jimmy Butler to slide over and guard Maxey. And if you're slowing down Maxey, right? James Harden's going to be James Harden. We know he's going to be the wild swing of, hey, I have my spurts and then I don't have my spurts and then I'm disappearing because it's a playoffs, and whatever James Harden's going to do, he's going to do. But if you slow down Maxey, they're in real problems. And I don't know why this was on PJ Tucker, but PJ Tucker talked about it in the last post game about how since coming to Miami, Spo and Pat, like they let him kind of lead and be a leader and speak up in huddles and whatever. And he said after the last game, he spoke to Bam and Jimmy about defensive assignments and what they need to do and this, that, and the third. And you see Jimmy coming out and neutralizing Maxey is it really slowed down the Heat a lot. So you remove Kyle Lowry, who's hobbled and wasn't really giving you anything. And at least Vincent, if he's not hitting shots, at least he's playing defense. And that is something that Lowry wasn't able to give them because he's hobbled. And I think that is a really massive adjustment that you add that to the adjustment of how Bam's been playing Embiid after, Embiid made his re-entry into the series. You're kind of neutralizing him with Bam. And now you're just coming down to James Harden. And I'm familiar with James Harden's work in the playoffs. You know where I stand on that. If he's going to have those games, cool. He did it once against the Raptors. Cool. He's done it once already in this series. To me, time's up, right? Like we've seen this. You don't have that much in your bag in the playoffs, James Harden. So that's really where it's coming from. Removing Lowry, an injured Kyle Lowry. I can't emphasize that enough because I'm not trying to throw shade at Lowry. He's clearly hurt. He couldn't move around. You're getting way more from playing your bench guys, which if you remember, got them here. That's why they have the 1 seed, because of their depth and the young guys they're able to throw in and have them play.
Yeah.
I'm not going to boost Strus's shots. Strus hit a couple shots at home, but that's not why. Like, I think it's more defensively. But
no, I get it. I mean, what if Gabe Vincent doesn't play? Because right now he's listed as questionable with a knee, and maybe now all of a sudden he's becomes hobbled. He becomes hobbled guy who has to play in there. I guess like you make a ton of great points from an X and O standpoint. I just look at it and I go, you talked about the Heat like winning on the road, 1-3 so far in the playoffs, on the road. Like shouldn't say couldn't, because they ended up beating Atlanta relatively handily in I believe it was game 4 of that series. I just, again, like I'm just late to the party maybe on this Heat team as far as them being sort of championship medal, which probably isn't all that fair. I mean, they were in the bubble title series, NBA finals. And I just think that this is like that home series type of deal where like the Heat are going to advance because they never had to win a game on the road. And that, the Sixers supporting group, the Maxis of the world, right? And we're doing that thing again. And again, sometimes it's right. Like, it's not like that it's wrong. It's just like, we find a defensive player to sick on an offensive player and just sort of assume that the defensive player like wins the matchup, right? Which is a lot easier to do at home than it is on the road, energy being what it is and all of that sort of stuff. There's a reason why the home team wins the vast majority of NBA playoff games or NBA games as a whole. And so like now we're going down the line where we're like Gabe Vincent is the Jalen Ramsey like of the Heat, where it's like, oh, Jamar Chase has no chance against Jalen Ramsey. It's like, yeah, no, you know what, Jamar Chase is actually pretty good, and like he's going to win some of those battles as well.
And just guarding Danny Green.
Yeah. And so, no, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, obviously it's Jimmy Butler who has to, who's getting that sort of that role, so to speak. But like, that's also going to put a little extra mileage, mini mileage, if you will, on Jimmy Butler. Right. So like, if the expectation is 40 points out of Jimmy Butler every game, or sort of as long as you need him, obviously the game got out of hand, so you didn't need 40 points technically out of Butler. But if he's going to be that guy who is like the lone scorer on the team, but he's also going to be the guy who's going to chase Maxey around. Now, listen, you and I talk about Glenn Rivers' PhD, about whether he's going to actually make any adjustments and all of that sort of thing. So like, my adjustment would be making Jimmy Butler run his ass off for an entire game, right? That would be something that I would do. Now, is the doc going to prescribe that? I don't know, right? We never know what Glenn is going to do. And so I just kind of almost go away from that and kind of stumble back to like, you know what, I'm just going to take the home team in this series. And again, a short price -2. And again, maybe that's a bad decision, but like, I think this is different than the series that we're going to talk about next, in that like, this is just like, honestly, whoever's at home is going to play much better. And there isn't a difference between the two teams in the way that I think we want there to be, because you and I don't really care much for Joel Embiid, and we have a respect for what the Heat are doing and all of that sort of thing. So like, I would be on the Sixers, not for as much as maybe I will be in this next game that we're going to talk about, but like, if I had to, that's certainly the play that I would make there. And I probably will be betting it.
Yeah, no, trust me. I totally get it. And I'm well aware of my biases towards your friend and mine, Glenn Rivers, and Joel Embiid and James Harden's work. And I mean, the sulking about MVP, the whining about getting hit in the face with the ball. Like, you do realize you're playing basketball. We all know that you're playing hurt. We're all aware. We get it. You're playing tough. You're playing through it. You will get credit for that, Mr. Embiid. Cool. But we're not going to be out here feeling sorry for you, right? Like, that's not a thing that's happening, especially when there's injuries throughout the league. Interesting to see how that game plays out for sure. Heat +2. Let's go. Let's see how that goes. And finally, one last game, the Mavs and Suns. Suns lead that series 3-2 after 110-80 victory in Game 5. Game 6 is Thursday night. Suns favored by 2 on the road. You know I'm going to be on the Suns here. Real teams win closeout games on the road. And as you know, I think the Suns are real. This is another institutional win. I think there's a lot of actual like dislike between these two teams. Right? Like, you see some of the clips that are floating around of Luka and Devin Booker kind of jawing on the court. It's just, the Suns, it's just their time, right? Like, they are locked in right now. The Mavs, there's some real issues there, I think, just with their squad and how they play and how Luka plays and the one-on-one play. And if that's not rolling, what are you actually doing? And then it's, you're not going to beat the Suns with Luka going one-on-one. You're just not.
Well, the issues with the Mavs are like, they're just all right. Yeah. They're just an all right team. And this is where the rubber hits the road. And you said it perfectly before. Like, I said this, previous when we said that we were betting on the Suns -6.5 in Game 5. I'm going to be on them again in Game 6, because this is like the Pelicans series, right? Like, weird stuff can happen in the first 4 games of a series, right? Like, shooting outliers can happen. Stuff like Chris Paul fouling out can happen. If you think they're going to foul out Chris Paul in this game, you are insane. You have lost your damn mind, right? This is not happening, not after what happened in the stands with his family and all of that sort of stuff. And that also means you're going to get locked in Chris Paul, right? You're going to get locked in Suns. You're going to get all of that stuff, right? You're not going to get the assumption that we're going to be fine type of the Suns. They're going to get like, okay, like, enough is enough. We're not playing a Game 7 in the same way that you saw against the Pelicans in the first round. So not much to say there. I want to talk about some hockey. Phoenix -2. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. So to recap, I'm on Phoenix. We're recapping all of the Game 6s here. Give me Phoenix Suns on the road -2. Give me the Heat +2 in the city of Philadelphia. Let's go Heat. Give me the Warriors -8.5 on Friday. And to close out, I'm on the Bucks -1.5 to close out their series as well Friday night. That is our NBA recap there with some picks also mixed in. We'll get back to the pod in a sec, but first, be a pro and win. Introducing DRF Sports all new premium data feature on drf.com/sports. For $99 a year, which is just $8.25 a month, you can get industry-leading betting trends, angles, and analytics. With so many big sporting events here, it's the best way for you to make some money this postseason and have fun while doing it. That's DRF Sports Pro. Sign up now at drf.com/sports. But you mentioned there's also a lot going on here in terms of the NHL, and I can't lie to you, Thursday night, my main TV is going to be on the Toronto Maple Leafs, trying to do something they have not done since I was just out of high school. Like
since I moved to Toronto.
Like it's kind of crazy. And I can't lie to you, my main TV will be on that game with the with the Heat game on the small TV. So that's my setup. I'm fired up for that game. I kind of know where you're going. You kind of know where I'm going as a fan, because that's where I'm at with the NHL and hockey.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews or bust. That's about it.
Right.
But talk to me about their chances here, because I'm using the same thing that I just said. If you are a real team with real championship aspirations, I don't care who you're playing, you could figure out a way to win on the road. I'm not saying that the Leafs, follow me here. I'm not saying that the Leafs are going to win, but I'm saying they would show me a lot by winning this game in Tampa.
They would show a lot of people a lot, because a young Matt Russell moved to Toronto in the spring of 2005, fresh off of a canceled NHL season in its entirety. And not that I was even entertaining the idea of becoming a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. That certainly was never the case, but I figured, there's going to be some playoff action at some point. There's going to be some celebration action at some point. And here we are 17 years later, and I'm still waiting to see the celebration. So when you talk about being fired up for Friday, are you positive you're even going to make it to Friday? Because you just might be out in the streets for 24 hours if the Leafs win this game. But I love this series because it's like this low-key predictable series, right? Where we were on Toronto in game 1. We knew Tampa Bay was going to come back in game 2, right? Game 4, whoever won game 3 was probably going to lose game 4, and then it was going to turn into the home ice series where you've got now, of course, Toronto winning game 5. And I tweeted out the other day, like, the best thing about sports betting is when you don't really care who wins, you get to bet on the Maple Leafs in game 5, fist pump that they get the comeback win, and then immediately look for the best price possible on open for the Tampa Bay Lightning in game 6. And that's what I did. And I was able to grab a -116 out there, still some -120s, et cetera, et cetera. That's all fine by me. My numbers make this close to -150, given all of the circumstances and the situations. Metrics through 5 games, we like to talk about that, right? And this is a combination of expected goal share, right? So if both teams have a certain amount of expected goals, 5-on-5, obviously, we always talk about even strength. Both teams have a certain amount, right? Who had the higher percentage, right? And if you have the higher percentage of expected goals, you're probably going to win more often than not. And so it's a combination of expected goal share and high danger chance share. And in this case, it's 51.5 to 48.5 in this series for Tampa at even strength. Now, obviously, Toronto has the lead in this series because they have done better shorthanded. They have done better on the power play, and they have done better at 4-on-4. The rare instances, and of course, that there have been 4-on-4s. I think it was 2 goals 4-on-4 for the Leafs in that game in game 5. So each team got a home game, but since game 3, I think it's a home team series. Whether Toronto chokes in game 7 is another thing entirely. I've said before the season start, or from the postseason starting, this thing is going 7. It's just always has been. It always will be. I can't imagine this not going 7. When you sort of slay a dragon, whether it's a specific team, whether it's a specific circumstance, call Red Sox winning the World Series type of a thing. When you do it, you have to do it in the most dramatic way possible. Like, that's just how this works. So we're going to see game 7. We are probably going to see overtime in game 7. And if the Leafs are going to slay this dragon of never, in my modern existence anyway, of living here, of never winning a playoff series, it's got to happen in overtime in game 7. So whether or not it does, I think that's going to be the challenge. I think, listen, there's a possibility that Toronto wins this game. That's obviously a possibility. But if you were telling me at minus 120 that this is some like 54, 55, 56% chance thing, or better than that, or should say worse than that, I can't, right? I think Tampa Bay is at the very least 60% to win this game. So I will be betting on Tampa Bay.
Listen, I
should say I've already bet on Tampa Bay because I did it instantly after the game.
Listen, I totally get it. I totally understand. And as a Leaf fan, watching them just struggle year after year, and with this core, the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope was that last game, that comeback was the best playoff game by far that core has played. My hesitation and the thing that gives me worry, right? The things that gives me worry, because no, but seriously, go back to that game. You had Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, Riley all score. Like they all showed up. That's never happened in this iteration of the Leafs. The one thing that gives me worry is that it takes old man Jason Spezza to be telling you, right? He's the one coming off the bench, gassing up Campbell after during a TV timeout. He's the one that's in the locker room saying, guys, we need to take it another level, giving the passionate speech. Like, why is that old man Jason Spezza?
But that's his role.
Scratch. No, I know, but my guy was a scratch early on. Where is the leadership from the core? Where is that's the thing that makes me still take a pause and be like, yeah, they could come out and get blown out in Tampa again because they're not real, right? That's the thing that has me worried. That's what I'm saying.
Well, what should have you worried is that they played their best game in that core's existence of 4 or 5 years. And the idea that they're going to play as good or better in the next game would be the thing that would concern me.
Totally. But I do have a real question for you because you've been blessing me with these numbers, the high danger chances and all that. And a lot of it's based on 5-on-5 play. Yeah. But this series by far has had the most special teams of any of the other series. Like the Leafs penalty minutes are insane in this series. How does that reflect then on how much you take out of all of those stats that are so much based on 5-on-5 play? Is it do you just, because it's a less of a sample size, do you not take it as much into it, or does it not really matter as much because especially as the series gets later, the assumption is going to be you're not going to have as many penalties. The refs can do whatever they want. Game 7 is not going to be called the same way that games 1 through 5 have been, right? That's a safe assumption.
Yeah, essentially, yes. Obviously, we don't expect there to be as many penalties as there have been. But even if there is, the idea is, all right, you tell me who's going to take advantage of a lot of penalties, right? Who's going to take advantage of there being high minutes in, shorthanded or man advantage, right? Because the idea is on a game-to-game basis, it's why you've seen 5-2 and 5-1. And these games haven't been close up until game 5 is because one team on one night took advantage of, Tampa Bay didn't take advantage of a 5-man or 5-minute power play in game 1. Toronto was the better team in special teams. The very next game, Tampa's the better team in special teams, right? If you could predict who the better team was going to be in special teams, we'd be off and running, right? We'd be ready to go here. But over the course of 5 games, essentially both teams could very well be equal because we know going in Toronto's power play, 27, something along those lines %. Tampa Bay's historically really, really good. Not that great this year, but we're running at 45% for a portion of the playoffs last year and have basically all the same weapons. So there's just no way to predict. So when we talk about predictive metrics, that's why we focus on the even strength play, because there's more of it. When we get to these games going to overtime, of which there really haven't been that many, strangely enough, in the first round of these playoffs, I think we're talking 3 overtime games, something along those lines. Because we're playing 5-on-5 and these series are going to come down to who wins that overtime game, maybe in a game 7, for example. Then the 5-on-5 stuff is just going to be more important. And the 5-on-5 stuff is going to create more power plays like we talked about, right? If you get 5 and I only get 4, but I'm 25% on the power play and you're 20% on the power play, that's still like one expected goal for each side, right? Like, so it is going to be even on either side. So yeah, like if we can look back and you can tell me that there's, the Leafs had 6 power plays and Tampa only had 3 or vice versa, then yeah, I would favor whoever has the more power plays. But I'd be also willing to bet that if you have the more power plays, it means you probably were the better team at even strength because that's how you created those power plays. Yeah. Now you get some weird situations where where weird penalties are happening that are maybe against the run of play, but that's not all that predictive. That would be considered an outlier as well. And so the fun part about this series, or maybe it's not all that fun, it's fun if you've been on the right side of it, is these games have been decided because the outlier has been that one team taking turns has had that big of an advantage in that one game. But over the course of the entire series, Toronto has the slight advantage in non-5-on-5, and that's why they're up 3-2, because Tampa Bay has been the slightly better team at even strength, right? And so I would expect Tampa Bay to be the better team at even strength at home in game 6, and I would expect them to potentially, because of that, be the better team in special teams in game 6. And if they're not and Toronto can overcome that, that's really, really impressive. But based on the idea that, even looking backwards retroactively, that Tampa is still, again, 51.5 to 48.5 from a probability standpoint. Like this is, this series is tight, man. Like this series is tight. It's where we thought it was going to be. And so nothing's really changed for me. We've done really well as far as game to game betting. And a lot of that is just predicting that this is going to be a really, really close series, and, and just hoping where the chips fall, where they may.
I'll say this much: RIP David Stern. And if Gary Bettman learned anything from Mr. David Stern, Scott Foster would be flying in to be the referee for this game. And we're getting a Saturday night game 7 hockey night in Canada. Oh my damn.
Yeah.
I'm getting like chills just thinking about that already. Let's move on though, because I know I took up. Sorry, I had a lot of Leafs questions there.
That's fine.
Honestly, I'm really interested there, but what else is going on in these NHL playoffs? Because I know there's series where it's kind of like they flipped drastically. All of a sudden, Florida's coming out of nowhere. Edmonton is down. Is Edmonton in some real trouble? Like, tell me which series right now at this point really has, your eye right now, as bleep is hitting the fan.
Can all of the above count? Like we just went through all the game 5s and we're somehow 7 series are still alive. And of course, I have to get in one last thing. We're contractually obligated to mention that the Tampa Bay Lightning basically never, ever, ever lose 2 games in a row in the playoffs. So we got to put that out there. Until they do. Carolina, Boston is obviously the one that I'm sweating out profusely. I hope this is going 7 versus I quote unquote know that the Toronto and Tampa series is going 7. Let's go back to the metrics here. Looking back at the play that has happened so far, the Bruins are 52.4% to Carolina's 47.6, which, given that they were priced at 50% to start the series, is pretty good, right? They have been better than expectation. The problem is the puck isn't going in the net and they're not stopping any pucks. Jeremy Swayman, Linus Ullmark, nobody knows what's going on as far as being in the crease for Boston. Hopefully it's just a matter of the Bruins needing 4 tries to win a road game. I think they win in Boston tonight. I have bet it as such, laying the -130 price on the Bruins. And yeah, it'd be nice if the Bruins had won one of the first 3 games in Carolina, of which they were certainly competitive in each one, even though the score wasn't particularly flattering because things would get a little out of control later on. Series price is +280 right now. That is basically a function of parlaying Boston in this game with them in the next game. There is no value on either side necessarily, unless we saw Boston come down a little bit. So there might actually be a little bit of value on just taking the +280 with the Bruins to win the series, but I am already on the game and I will be on the game probably as well. Although if you already have the series price, you probably don't need to be betting a game 7 unless you have some sort of, extreme confidence in a team. Thought this would be over by now. Unfortunately, it's not, because they went 0 for 3 in Carolina. Speaking of series, I thought they would be over by now. The Oilers and the Kings, I guess, how is this not going 7? I can't believe we're even here at this point. Yeah. McDavid and Draisaitl just electric in the third period of that game in game 5 at home. And then LA comes out, right? Like the momentum folks out there are dying because all it took was an intermission break for the Oilers. If that game goes an extra 5 minutes in regulation, the Oilers win and probably win relatively handily. And it doesn't. The Kings get to rally, regroup, and they score a minute into overtime. And now all of a sudden, you're sitting here going like, are these Oilers really going to do this again? Are they really going to do this? And all we requested was Mike Smith play average goal. At this point, the Kings have 15 goals altogether. They have 6 of those goals on high danger chances converted, of which a pretty decent ratio on Smith, right? They've only converted about 11%, I think, which is still a little bit below average. They have 2 power play goals and they have 1 empty net goal. That means they have 6 non-high danger chance goals on Mike Smith, which I'm here to tell you is too many over the course of 5 games. It's an issue for a couple of goaltenders of higher caliber than Mike Smith. So it happens from time to time, but this is the stuff that you have to keep out. So we're not getting the goaltending that we want from Mike Smith. And by the way, somebody else on Edmonton could do something other than McDavid or Draisaitl. But listen, Edmonton played well enough in Game 4 that 4-0 score was probably should have been closer to something along the lines of 2-2 from an expected goal standpoint. And certainly Edmonton blew the Kings out in Game 3. I don't know if it's a matter of getting their attention. You'd think Game 4 would have gotten their attention. Again, McDavid and Draisaitl are doing everything they possibly can. I'm on Edmonton to win Game 6. I'm going to lay that price at -140. Minnesota, St. Louis, I have no idea at any given moment who is going to play well in whatever period of time you want to give me. If you said, well, who's going to play well in the next 10 minutes? I have no idea. Who's going to play well in the next game? I have no idea. This series is off the rails. I wrote about betting on Kirill Kaprizov to win the Conn Smythe at, I think it was something along the lines of 50-1. He's got 7 goals in 5 games, but my guy might not even get a shot at the Colorado Avalanche in the next round because honestly, the rest of the team isn't doing anything. Marc-Andre Fleury, speaking of soft goals, that's a thing that's happening. Again, we predicted that both goaltenders were going to give up soft goals. The Blues have already given up on the goaltender they started with, and now they're back, to Jordan Binnington. I don't know that Minnesota is going to do that because you're going to give Marc-Andre Fleury every opportunity here to succeed. The problem is they only get one more opportunity. Metric standpoint, 55.3% for the Wild, and yet they are down 3-2, which, again, Edmonton was 52.4. Boston was 52.4. Of course, we talked about the 51.5 for Tampa Bay. And so I just look at it and go, this is actually the most lopsided one of these 4 that play tonight. And at 55.3%, the Wild were -140 before the series started, which isn't all that far off from 55.3%. That's about 57, something along those lines, percent if you took some implied win probability. I will bet the Wild tonight if I can get even money. Right now, it's basically a pick 'em on either side. I think -105 is the best we can do here. But honestly, like this series is more entertaining really than it is sort of worth betting on because it's complete chaos. Speaking of complete chaos, Rangers and Penguins. So Game 4, 20-1. In even strength, high danger chances for Pittsburgh in Game 4, where they rout the Rangers. It's the biggest even strength play blowout I have ever seen for the course of this series. The metrics for this entire series, 65.1% is the probability of the Penguins winning a series that if they played consistently this way. They played pretty well again yesterday. They get a 2-0 lead. Shesterkin getting pulled in those first 2 games, thought he might get the hook again. We were this close potentially to him getting the hook. The Penguins get a 2-0 lead after not getting a goal on a 5-on-3. I thought they were in trouble when they didn't get that, but they get the 2-0 lead. But then what happens, right? Let's put it this way. Shesterkin, not the problem, okay? The team in front of him is the problem. That was always going to be the problem. And if you were going to bet on the Rangers, you needed Shesterkin to be a hero. If you are backing someone expecting the baseline to be a hero, and he's not, that's on you. Here's the problem. Once we get to Sidney Crosby exiting a game up 2-0, the driver of the play for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Now, all of a sudden, things get turned on their axis. And I was looking at that game yesterday going like, how am I not going to bet on the Penguins plus 115, knowing that they have played 65-35, right? And are plus 115 going into the game. And of course, they take a 2-0 lead. And I go, you know what? Like winning this series and winning -1.5 on this series is going to be great. But like, I probably missed an opportunity at plus 115. And the point is like this stuff is on a razor's edge, man. Sidney Crosby goes out and they don't know what to do with themselves. The Rangers score 3 goals. Now the Penguins score to tie it up on an incredibly soft goal on Shesterkin. Again, not being a hero. Now the Rangers get a power play goal late, right? The thing that you and I talk about, is this predictive? Is it predictive that the Penguins wouldn't score 5-on-3 in the first 3 minutes of the game for 2 full minutes? Not really, right? You think they would be the favorite to get a goal in that situation. And in this case, the Rangers get the power play goal that is the difference. That could have been flipped very easily. So the hope is going into game 6 that the Penguins can finish it up. Obviously, the hope is that Crosby's back. If he is, maybe I would bet the Penguins in game 6, but that's why we do the series price. That's why we do Pens -1.5 series price, to already have that stuff in play for the prices that we have it in play for. So I would expect the Penguins to win game 6, but we have already done our work as far as getting a bet down. You mentioned Florida and Washington. Series changer in game 4, potentially. The Caps up a goal, out on a breakaway, miss the long shot into the empty net. The Panthers get the goalie pulled. Everybody else in the world is getting empty net goals scored on them. It's the like scourge of the playoffs so far. No plus 1.5 is safe. In this case, the Caps give up the goal to Florida. They give up the goal in overtime. Then they take the 3-0 lead last night, and the Panthers do what they do. They have the most down 3-goal comebacks in the league over the last couple of years. They come back, and like that's why they've been favored the way that they have been. That's why they've been favored the way that they have been, because they are capable of that. They take the series lead now going back to Washington. But honestly, I think I have to play Washington in game 6 because metric standpoint, another 52.5%. It's almost like these books are somehow cooked. But is it a coincidence that all these series are going 6 games, potentially 7, being 52, 51, 55 on either side, the Penguins being the outlier at 65%? I don't think it's a coincidence, man. Like, this is the NHL. This is what the NHL prides themselves on. Parity, games that could go either way, series that could go either way. I got to be on Washington. Anything better than plus 150. Washington at home in game 6 to force the game 7. And at that point, honestly, who knows? And then finally, Dallas and Calgary last night, game 5. This series, like, if the games are in Calgary, they are criminally boring. There is next to no scoring chances on either side. When they're in Dallas, it is somehow lit AF. In game 5, 2.02, 1.73 in the expected goals for in favor of Calgary. They win the game 2-1 plus the empty net goal, so 3-1. So it like kind of mirrors exactly what the expected goals for would be 5-on-5. Neither team gets a power play goal. Both teams get 5 high danger chances. You and I talked about what's your favorite high danger chance. If they were breakaways, you know, each team gets 5 breakaways. Guess who scored? Calgary was the one who scored on their high danger chance last night at even strength. So they get the win, 2-1 comeback win through 2 periods. They were down 1-0. Looked like we might have another 1-0 ish score. Didn't happen. Calgary played a great third period to not stave off elimination, obviously, but to take a lead. Dallas in game 6, if you have Dallas plus 1.5, you've had 2 chances to win that bet already, and you still have Dallas at plus 145 in a game that's about where their money line is going to be. So you've had 2 chances plus the game. If you haven't played Dallas yet, game 6, I'd play Dallas at plus 140 or better. But if you've already got that bet, you're already set. And then, of course, there's Colorado having absolutely annihilated the Predators. You know, Colorado's sitting at home just waiting for whoever's going to win that Minnesota-St. Louis series. Maybe that starts on Sunday. I mean, maybe it even starts on Saturday. That would be kind of cruel. You never like to see a series end before 7 games and one team only gets a day off. So I would expect that series to start on Sunday. So watch for my preview on Colorado versus whomever, on all of these teams versus whomever. You can find that over, of course, at MRussAuthentic on Twitter. And the Score app, I'm busy this weekend with 4 previews to write. I just don't know who the teams are yet as far as who those previews are going to be written about.
The Stanley Cup playoffs on fuego, the NBA playoffs on fuego. My guy, Matt Russell, on fuego. Thanks for stopping by. As always, to break things down, we'll get you back on down the line, my dude.
Thanks very much, pal. Appreciate it.
And if you want to follow me online, you can do so on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander and on Twitter at Shell Alexander. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the DRF Sports Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also rate us, review us, like us, all that other fun stuff. But for more from this new project from DRF Sports, just a little reminder. If you're unfamiliar with the letters DRF, it stands for Daily Racing Forum, which has been around for over 100 years, giving you all of the horse racing information, data, and analysis. But now we've taken over the entire sports world. So if you want coverage on every football game, as well as the NBA, MLB, college sports, and more, head to drf.com/sports for all of the details and insights, as the site has all of the data on every game, including offensive and defensive stats, betting angles, line movements, key injuries, team stats, and more. The DRF data is what powers our power trends. So if you want to see which trends our analysts have selected, follow us on Instagram and on Twitter. If you want access to all of the raw data, drf.com/sports. That's where you can find the usual previews as we deep dive into the games. Of course, got you covered on this podcast. However you want your betting information, we've got you covered. Again, my name is Sheldon Alexander. That's all I got for now. But until next time, see ya.
Thanks for listening to the DRF Sports Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. For more sports betting advice, go to drf.com/sports and follow on Twitter at DRF_sports.